Hey guys, sorry for the break in the videos. It turned out to be pretty difficult to fit that in on the trip in Australia. I was busy doing a lot of different things, cuddling koalas, snorkeling, learning to surf, and I just didn't get around to doing the videos. But now I'm back and I'm ready to tell you why a bishop is better than a knight. That's a request that I've had to explain it. Now, the simple explanation is a bishop is a long range piece that moves faster than a knight, so it has more power. But I would also add to that one of the biggest differences is that a bishop can be very effective from its starting position. So you don't even need to develop it. It just needs to have an open diagonal and it can actually land the winning move from its starting position, something that a knight almost can never do. I mean, there might be a few exceptions like in chess that you can find in the history of chess where a knight moves from its starting position and that's somehow winning, right? But generally that doesn't happen. But for a bishop, it's actually quite typical. And it shows the really big difference between a bishop and a knight. So I found a few specific examples that are going to illustrate that. The first one is from a very famous chess player, Garry Kasparov, with the white pieces in a rapid game against Nigel Short from 2001. So we have a French defense here. And I think the first kind of interesting moment in this game is when white makes this surprising move, bishop to b5. Because normally in these structures, with all these pawns in the dark squares, you're expecting this bishop to go here. Looks like a really nice diagonal pointing at the king. So why is the bishop going to b5? Well, the answer is that on this move, black is planning to trade his bad bishop like that. It's going to be hard for white to avoid that trade because moving back means that white is not going to be able to castle. So Kasparov's move is actually really designed against that trade. Now you might not really see why because black can still do it, but there's an important detail there. Basically, the point is that on this move, white plans to support the bishop with the pawn, and if the trade happens, the pawn improves, the rook opens up, and this knight is going to be hard to develop. That's a scenario that pretty much happened in the game, but I have to say that this move, bishop b5, is definitely a bit startling to the eyes if you've never seen it before. At least it was for me. Okay. Bishop e7, castles, castles, rook e1, a5. Okay, so now, actually, I would encourage you guys to pay attention to the journey of this knight, because it starts from here, went here, now it's going here. So white is actually going to invest a lot of time to bring that knight to the king side. Bishop a6, and white is only willing to trade the bishops on his terms. Because at least after this trade, this knight has difficulty getting out, right? It's definitely a goal in chess, guys, to make it as hard as possible for your opponent to do the desirable things for his position. So Nigel Short comes up with his plan, rook e8, knight g3, knight f8, and knight d7. By the way, this knight, to get to the king, has now made 4 moves. And yes, it's in a very menacing position, but can't really do anything just yet. Definitely, black has a number of defenders around the king, like this knight that can always go there. So Kasparov goes g3, just, I think, planning to improve his position a little bit more on the king side. And in this position, black makes a bad move with the move queen d7. But okay, but now let's try to figure out what white can do. I mean, by the way, queen d7 attacks the pawn, so it's really quite natural. And white plays this amazing move, bishop h6. And yeah, in just one move, the bishop goes to the opponent's side of the board and offers himself up. And you can't really deny taking him because the g7 pawn is not going to be able to be protected otherwise. So black takes. And now it's the queen's turn to try to get to that square. If the queen gets there, you know, you're probably familiar with these checkmate patterns. So yeah, this was maybe like a little bit of a one knight too much because You know, it even stops ideas of bishop f8, although in this particular situation there would be a fork. But yeah, there's just no one to guard h6. So black is desperately trying to connect some pieces to the king, but now white just takes the pawn en passant and brings in the queen. The attack is moving pretty fast, and the winning threat is just knight g5 and f7. So it's kind of interesting how after the sacrifice of the bishop, it's like now it's the knight's turn to get a star roll. Yeah, there's really not much that black can do here. He's pretty paralyzed. And here Nigel resigned. He's already down material, and if he tries to take the knight, then this is going to be a checkmate. So short and sweet example, only 25 moves on the power of the bishop, guys. Yeah, so just look at it again. This is something that a bishop can do in one go, while for the knight to get to this position, for example, it took him 4 moves, right? Okay, so now let's go to an example from the game of Grandmaster Andrei Gorovets. And he has this position. It definitely looks kind of nice for white because white has the big center. But if you push, you lose the pawn. If you attack the queen, really tempting, but you find yourself in that pin and you're not really going anywhere. Plus, you got to watch out for black playing knight a5. So what does he do? Well, look at that bishop. It's never been developed, but it gets to play a very key role in the development of white's attack. So now black's best is actually just accepting that he's lost that pawn and trying to trade the queens and just playing this position down a pawn. But of course, you know, it's hard to accept that. So black actually made the principled move, taking the bishop, which loses the game much faster. Now knight d5. This square has been weakened. And where can the queen go? The problem is if she goes here, then check here, and then let's say queen c2, threatening checkmate on h7. Rook h8 and d5 is going to be a very unpleasant fork. We're going to get our piece back with an attack against black's king. So the queen went back to d8 and knight f6, king g7. Now you can go queen c2, but you're not going to have like a winning as clear of a win after rook h8. So actually Gorovets found a nice way to do it. He changed direction, and he, instead of going for the h7 square, he went for the h6 square right here. Actually kind of like Kasparov, right? Same motif. There's a knight on h5. There's a queen trying to come to h6. So I didn't even realize how similar these examples were. They appeared a little bit different. And black again tries to connect his pieces to the king using the f-pawn, just like Nigel Short did. But here the queen takes, threatens the checkmate. And again, the knights come in, right? So after the bishop sacrifices himself and the king is open, the knights actually are playing an important role here. And black threw in the towel. Why is that? Well, the queen's under attack. Pawn f7 is coming. You know, so if the queen moves there, you're just going to basically go f7. They'll have to give up their queen. So that move, bishop takes h6, was quite devastating. So let's look at it again. Bishop from starting position, sacrifices on h6. It's a very common thing, guys, and it really just illustrates, you know, what a bishop can do that a knight cannot do. And in our final example, this one is a little bit different. I decided to look at the other side of the board, so where white will sacrifice something on the queen side. Now, this is not exactly the same because this bishop has already moved, right? But you're going to see it's actually a very pretty theme. So it's going to be the bishops sacrificing themselves so the knights can then play star roles. So yeah, not really a good idea to tempt your opponent into making that sacrifice. That wasn't very prudent. Bishop for 2 pawns plus the queen's entry. Why would you allow that? And then the next bishop sacrifice, threatening the queen and this bishop, so it's got to be accepted. So essentially black allowed his king to be completely torn apart here. Now the knight comes in, threatening checkmate. Knight e8. The other one comes in, threatening checkmate. And after bishop c8, yeah. By the way, the knight cannot take because of queen a7 mate. That would be a deflection. And after bishop c8, well, okay, you're just giving up that piece. So you can safely resign. So it's actually interesting. White sacked both bishops, but both knights survived and won the game in the end, right? So yeah, I would say that's kind of one way of looking at it, guys, is that a bishop, as soon as a pawn gets out of his way in the opening, we consider this a partially opened piece. We wouldn't really say that he's completely undeveloped the way these knights are. The knights are truly awful on the back ranks, and that's why you should really hurry to get them into the game. Once a bishop has an open diagonal, you know, you can sort of wait on it, and sometimes it's just not even necessary to move him for a while because he's already, you know, doing a good enough job, right? The reason usually this bishop will move out earlier in the game is because, well, you're trying to castle, right? So he has to move for that to happen. But, you know, this bishop, if castling is not required, queenside, you know, you can wait longer to develop a bishop like that. All right, guys. So I hope that gives you a new take on why a bishop is better than a knight.